of them were miners, and the other half were all military, and quite long-serving military as well. So it was just something in my blood. I just had to get it out. You know, it was like an itch you can't scratch,
Right.
and it just had to be done. So I got to a point in my life where I was going through a bit of a rocky patch with my then fiance. So I just went, oh, do you know what? I'll do the next best thing to joining the Foreign Legion and go join the British Army. Why not? You know, everybody else has done it. When I was 16, I went to join the Navy originally, but because of my eyesight, they said, nah, thank you, but no thank you. So I left it 5 years. I got qualified as a mechanic in Civvy Street. And then at 21, I went to the recruiting office and I went, I've got to do this. You know, so the 7th of January 1990, got on the train from Derby, went down to Reading, where I was picked up in the back of a 4-ton truck, where myself and my kit was thrown in there and told, sit down and shut up, and we'll get you to the depot. So I arrived at depot on the 7th of January 1990. The reason why that date sticks in your mind is, one, it's the day that your whole life changes. But also, it was less than a year later, I was actually stepping off a plane in Kuwait, ready for the First Gulf War. So I had a bit of a baptism of fire. So I had 3 months basic training, basic soldier training. I've got a little note here, memory from the first day. The thing that still sticks with me now, and ironically enough, I've met up with a few of the guys over the last year or so on Facebook, through Facebook pages and everything, and guys that I joined up with. And it was the accents. I thought I didn't have an accent until I joined up, you know, and then you stood there with 40 or 50 other guys, you know, with accents from Northern Ireland, from Scotland, from Wales as well, you know, from all over parts of England. And it was just like, wow, I need a translator. There was a fair few Scots lads as well. And there was one lad in particular who didn't make it through training, unfortunately, through an accident. But he was from Dundee, and I couldn't understand a damn word he said. Not a single word. So another pal of mine who I'm really close with now on Facebook, Colin, he acted as my translator because he came from another English-speaking part of Scotland, which was Glasgow. Whenever, I always remember his name, whenever Danny spoke to me, I always looked at Colin and said, can you translate for me? Because I don't understand a word this guy is saying, mate, you know? So that's what strikes me as my first day in basic training. And but yeah, good times. So that was 10 weeks then, a little bit shorter than Barry's, but then it was 10 weeks soldier training before going on to the trade training school, which is in Borden in Hampshire. Right. And that's where I spent the next 8 months doing my mechanic training, which for me was a bit of a revision, really, apart from when it came to heavy armor, to tanks and what have you. So all the basics part of it, you know, was all exactly the same as I'd already done a couple of years earlier in college. Except for when I went to heavy armor, which I just fell in love with straight away. I don't know why. It's probably because, like me, you know, they were big and heavy and chunky, and you know, just needed some muscle work on it. And so I just fell in love with tanks, and that was it from day one. And 8 months later, I'm stepping off a plane into Germany, being whisked straight off to warfare training, getting ready for the First Gulf War. I spent 4 days back in the UK. Christmas Eve I landed, and the day after Boxing Day I took off again to go back to Germany to fly straight out to Saudi Arabia as it is, in preparation for going out into the desert and then carrying on for the First Gulf War from there. So that was a bit of a wake-up call, you know. Got fed daily information, you know what I mean? You will parade at this place at this time, you know. And one particular day they said everybody will meet in the gym, you know, 8 o'clock in the morning, make sure you're wearing a shirt. Right, okay. So we turned up. The medics told us to take our jumpers off and roll our sleeves up. And basically, we walked down a row of medics who were either side of us. So you had a jab in one arm, a jab in the other one, we move on, a jab in that arm, a jab in the other one. And that was how it went, you know. So we had all the usual jabs, you know, yellow fever, polio, tetanus, as well as anthrax, bubonic plague, and all sorts of other stuff as well. So yeah, we were basically walking guinea pigs, I think, at the time.
Yeah, so, all in one go.
Yeah, yeah, there was no weeks or days in between. It was all in one shot, and away you go. So, and then you did that, roll your sleeves back down, and then crack on with the training for the rest of the time. It's quite funny as well, especially when you see some big, hairy, squaddy, tough as nails, covered in tattoos, who's absolutely terrified of needles. And when he collapses in front of you, you kind of get the injections in before he wakes up. It was a B.A. Baracus moment a lot of the time. So, and then when we actually got out on the ground and we realised it was actually going to go ahead. The air war had started. We were watching the B-52s and the other fighter bombers going over the top of us. Wow. To hit places like in the emplacements outside of Kuwait City and the Iraqi forces as well. We were watching those for days, and then we realised that the ground war was going to start as well. But before then, Saddam Hussein had turned around and said that it'd be the mother of all battles, and the infidels. Well, I've never been called that before. But the infidels will be slaughtered. And because we knew also that he'd used chemical warfare against his own people, so we were made to take all different, they were called NAPs and BAPs, which was nerve agent pre-treatment and biological agent pre-treatment. So these are little tablets that we had to parade twice a day to take these tablets. And it wasn't a choice in it, you will take them. So what effect they have, none of us know. We've all heard of Gulf War syndrome, but I think it's a hit and miss. Whether it affects some guys, and there's no doubting in that, and it didn't affect others. And touch wood, thank the heavens and everything that I'm hopefully one of those that it hasn't affected yet. But yeah, it was different because I didn't know any better. It was straight from the factory. Broke out the box and away you go. So a lot of the guys were saying it's the biggest exercise they've ever been on. But to me, it was all real. So the daily briefings we were getting, I was expecting to say, right, okay, we're going over the top any day, and it lasted for weeks. That did, and then when we finally did go over the top, and so we were constantly on the roll, moving from place to place. And you said about a little story. It's one of the little story that I do remember, and I've actually done a painting. It was one of the first paintings I did when I took up painting earlier this year. Yeah. Did a move across the desert, and we stopped at one particular point just to try and let everybody catch up. And as I jumped out the side of my wagon, I realised there was something spiky sticking out the floor, and I thought that was the weirdest looking cactus ever. And I realised it wasn't a cactus. Actually, it was a mine. It was a land mine. And I looked around, and then within about 10 meters, there was another one, and then another one. And then everybody kind of stood still and said, actually, we drove into the middle of a minefield. Then it was a case of trying to reverse all the wagons back out again, following the tracks that you've driven into. And if you try and do that with an articulated wagon, it's not that easy. I had to reverse about 500-600 meters with a trailer on the back, praying that something didn't go bang, because I wouldn't be sat here now. Well, the scary part of it was that it was so close to the actual Iraqi forces that it was probably our own ammunition. Scary times, but things that you kind of look back on and you go, that was close, but I'm glad I made it.
So you were a mechanic, and you were there to keep all the heavy vehicles moving. Yeah. Was that your principal role?
It was eventually, but at that time, because I was straight out the factory, so my soldering skills were a lot better then, or better thought of, than my spannering skills, believe it or not, because they just kind of generalize everybody. So I was attached to the reconnaissance platoon. So basically, we were going forward with everybody else, making sure everything was clear and safe. Well, obviously, at that point, it wasn't. So that's what I did for the first Gulf War. I was basically reconnaissance, making sure that everything was secure and we were taking the right routes.
So how long were you there for then in that first Gulf War?
I landed in January, and we took back off again because we actually stayed behind to de-bomb everybody. So basically all the ammunition they were bringing back after the liberation of Kuwait, all the regiments and the units that were coming back, had to be administered. The wagons had to be parked up and then loaded onto the ferries, onto the ships, to bring them back. So we left there the middle of May, whereas the actual war itself, as we all know, finished on the 25th of February. Yeah, it was a good spell afterwards. There was a lot of sparring went on then afterwards, because a lot of the trucks were basically held together with green army tape and string and chewing gum, so trying to get them ready to be roadworthy for when they got back off the ships in Germany. That was our principal aim, and make sure there was no ammunition left inside the hulls or anything like that, so. And that's basically how my career went on, really, because I'd kind of started my career as part of a reconnaissance unit. That's kind of followed me all the way round. So every unit I went to, I left. That was with the Royal Engineers I was posted to then. And then when I got posted back to the UK 4 years later, in 1994, I got posted to the Royal Welsh Fusiliers. That's how I ended up down here in the first place. I did the usual soldier thing, like, you know what I mean? I get a new posting, I meet a new girl, I fall in love, we get married eventually. But all the time I was always with reconnaissance, so it was always first in, last out, So yeah, I got posted back here in the August, and I met my lovely wife in the November. So. And then 3 years later, we got married. And in that 3 years, I'd done 2 more operational tours, as well as another 6-month course away. So how we got married when I was away for it for about 2 years out of the 3, I don't know. It's still a mystery to me. But 24 years later, she's still putting up with me.
When you say, you did 2 more operational tours, where were they?
The first one was in Bosnia in 1995, and it's the one with the Royal Welsh Fusiliers where some guys got taken captive, and it's gone down on record as being the most dangerous UN tour of modern times, because we were constantly under fire. Like I say, we had some guys that were taken captive, who were subsequently released without injury, but they were taken eventually after a 2-day firefight and a gun battle, where they were eventually overran through no fault of their own, just purely outnumbered and outgunned. But that was difficult times. We were under siege. We were in Gorazda, which was a pocket enclave in the southeast of Bosnia-Herzegovina, as was. Totally surrounded by Bosnian Serbs. We had no supplies for a lot of the time, and we were down to starvation rations as well. So everything was rationed. But yeah, we got through it. It was difficult times. I mean, to the point where the chefs, bless them, people within the army anyway. Certainly, everybody says the chef's course is the hardest one to do because nobody's ever passed it. But these guys were cooking on log fires. Obviously the gas had ran out for the cookers, so they improvised, and they were cooking for about 400 guys and ladies as well on log fires. And the meals they turned out when they were cooking for us were amazing. The mash was a little bit different because it was all instant potato mash, made from the water that was being filtered from the River Drina, and because it had gone through the filtration systems, it tasted like swimming pools. So if you've ever had chlorine flavored potatoes, that's an experience and a half that'll never leave me. So I'm traumatized every time I have instant mash. I'm traumatized by the thought of it tasting like chlorine. So
that was Bosnia, and then you said you did 2 tours. Was the other one back in Bosnia?
No, back the other one was Northern Ireland. Barry was in the sister regiment, which he was in the Royal Regiment of Wales, whereas I was with the Royal Welsh Fusiliers. But right. Yeah, that was Northern Ireland as well, and I was in East Tyrone for that one. I only wore my uniform twice. I was dressed, in civvies all the time. But yeah, it's the only time. So the second time I put uniform on was to meet the then Prime Minister, and I really struggled. I can't remember if it was John Major or David Cameron. I can never remember which one it was. I'd have to look it up on the internet to remember which one it was, because the time there just flew. We were always busy, or I was always busy. But it was around about the time where the politicians were working really, really hard to get the Good Friday Agreement signed. They were trying to cut back on the amount of patrols that the army were involved in, trying to hand responsibilities back to the police if it was, but they couldn't do it on their own because there was just too much terrorist activity around at the time. Again, my job had changed a little bit there, so I was predominantly working in civilian clothing, just going between places rather than bringing attention, in uniform and in military marked up vehicles. So mine was mostly plain vehicles, just normal cars and vans.
So
yeah, and because most of the military vehicles were off the road at the time, because they trying to cut down the amount of military presence on the streets, just making sure that if things escalated again, that everything was good to go. So just making sure that everything was serviceable and fit to go on the road and safe. So I came back from there, got posted back from there in the March, as I got married in the August. So I spent a little bit of time back in the UK in relative comfort and peace, as it were. And then we got married in the August, and then went out to Germany once we got married. So my wife had the delights of having the first 2 to 3 years in Germany, where we had our son as well. So he was 6 weeks old when we came back to the UK. That was when I came out and finished my time. My family was split down the middle between military and mining. And I'm too big to go down a mine, but besides that, I'm scared of the dark. For me, it was easy to make that transition to become a soldier. And when you say, when we do say, it's just a job. And to be honest with you, people only see us in the combat role, or in, occasionally they'll see us doing the support to the civil authorities. And basically 9 to 5, 95% of the time, it is another job, So just for us to say it is just a job, it is, it's just an alternative way of doing things. I think what I'll do the tactical retreat, because I tell you what, after you'd said that at the beginning, I'd like the surprise. I would like the surprise. I do apologise, I haven't got any photographs with me at the moment, but what I'll do is I'll put them onto the art website once I've dug them out.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you very much, Mark. Thanks.
No worries. Thank you.